Hi, my name is Julienne Chen, and I work for the city, for the Mayor's Innovation Delivery team. But I'm here tonight as a fellow urbanist, and I wanted to do a presentation that really was aligned with the spirit of ReSurfaced, which is the temporary use of space for public good and hopefully permanent benefit. So I thought I would draw on my experiences from the last city I lived in, which was Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So I went there for a conference in 2008 and was just super blown away by how lively the streets were, and actually ended up from the conference applying for a master's degree program at the University of Amsterdam, and kind of essentially stayed there for the next 3 years. So as small as it may seem, one of the moments when I really knew I wanted to stay there was when I was served a drink at a cafe, and it came with this thing in it. So you use it to stir your drink, and there are also these spikes at the end that you can use to muddle your lemon into the drink. And there was something so simple but logical and efficient about it that made me think, hey, I really want to stay here and learn some more. So my next experience with dual-purpose goods was my student housing, which was made out of repurposed shipping containers. So these were built in 2005 as a temporary use of vacant land to house students and asylum seekers, and soon will be dismantled and reconstructed elsewhere in the city. And I think they were about 19,000 euros per unit to build. So some of the units were pretty straightforward shipping containers, about 200 square feet on the inside, and mine happened to be a little bit different. So they spliced together a couple of different shipping containers to create a 2-bedroom apartment. And you can see in the top right corner the kitchen, and then behind is a hallway with a bathroom and another bedroom. And so the next slide is what is ultimately planned for that same site, and they have started construction. So kind of a big thread of this presentation is that when the economic crisis happened, a lot of development activity was put on hold, and it became a real necessity for the municipality to think of creative ways of keeping that land productive in the meantime. And to give a picture of why that's so important, here is an overlay of the Amsterdam metropolitan area over Louisville. So that area outlined in red is 1.2 million people live in that area, compared to the background shaded area, which is Jefferson County, and 750,000 people live there. So that gives some insight into kind of the land pressures and the imperative to max developable land. And so in fact, it's become such a thing that the city compiled this great map that shows all of the temporary projects going on, like this BMX bike park, and also all of the land that's still available for temporary use. And they can exercise this type of knowledge and control because, amazingly, the city actually owns almost 80% of the land in the region. So this is the first of 2 plugs in my presentation. In January, we bought an amazing double shotgun in Shelby Park, and we haven't been able to figure out what to do with the other side. And we would love to have someone to use it during the day, but just didn't know how to do the legwork to find someone. So if you have a good use for it, please let me know. And this is actually, the municipality of Amsterdam helps do that type of matching, but like on a much larger scale. So they actually have an entire department dedicated to the interim use of vacant buildings. And it's great because the developer can get some income, but more importantly, they have warm bodies in there, keeping it from getting broken into or squatted, and in many cases, keeping the neighborhood lively. So this is one example. It used to be a school, but later was converted to offices, and when that became vacant, the owners partnered with a couple of university students, and in exchange for cheap rent, they came in for 4 weekends. They converted them into student housing, but they could only live there for a couple of years until those offices were redeveloped. And then the next one is one that I really love. It's on a man-made island that the city started developing in 2002. And at first they were having some trouble attracting people to live there, and they had a ton of vacant land that was slated for development in future phases. So they leased that land out as a temporary beach, which was great in that it made use of the land, but it also brought people there and reframed how they thought of that island. So you can see here on the left the progress of the building behind the beach club, and the land is leased in 1 to 3 year cycles to accommodate the unpredictability of the housing market. So when the lease comes up and they need the land, the beach just moves further down. So they've actually already moved 3 times, and they're moving again this fall 500 meters down to allow for more development to happen. So they don't have to be huge things, though. This Amsterdam Stein is a lot more mobile, and they're on wheels, and the city will cart them around to activate different public spaces around the city. And somehow they're just these great people magnets. And actually, I think that these signs are one of the most photographed things in Amsterdam now. I wanted to bring it back to Louisville for a minute and show how these types of temporary projects are happening here at all scales as well. So whether it's a $15 sign to improve walkability, or a bus stop that was built for last year's parking day and is still there, or vacant lots that were activated through the mayor's Lots of Possibility competition, or amazing things like ReSurfaced. My second plug, I wanted to talk about a project that a couple of groups have been working on locally, which are quasi-temporary bus stops in Shelby Park and Sobro. So both of these bus stops are currently nothing more than a sign pole in the ground, and there was just so much more that we thought could be done with those areas. So beginning on Monday, we will be launching a 96-hour crowdfunding event through IOB, and we're hoping to get you all to pitch in just a little bit. Every dollar donated will be matched 1-for-1. And we hope that this project will really show the potential of something as small as a bus stop to activate these corners, draw attention to the neighborhood, and buses as a way of getting around the city. So I'm going to end on a last example back in Amsterdam. This is the Amstel Church, and it was built in a new neighborhood as what they called at the time an emergency place to worship. So they built it out of wood, and they called it a shed, and they used it while they were trying to raise money for a really fancy stone church for the space behind it. And then the Golden Age ended, and they were never able to get the money to build that stone church. And this is 400 years later. That temporary shed is still there and has become a permanent landmark. In the meantime, that space behind it that was reserved for the bigger church, the great thing is that since it wasn't developed, it ended up being this really great open space in the middle of the city. So those are just a couple of examples that I had. I hope you like them. Thank you.